Welcome to the Real Crime Diary, Daily Dose of Crime. I'm your host, MHB. Today we dive into a case that will leave you questioning the very foundations of our justice system. Tremaine Wood sits on death row for a murder his own brother confessed to committing. How could such a shocking injustice occur? As we unravel this twisted tale, we'll explore the dark underbelly of our legal system and the devastating consequences when it fails those it's meant to protect. Tremaine and Jake Wood's childhood was marred by violence and instability. Their father, a police officer, subjected their mother to brutal physical abuse. The boys witnessed horrific scenes, including their father threatening to set their mother on fire. This trauma left deep scars on both brothers. As children, Tremaine and Jake were inseparable, but their bond took a dark turn when they were separated in foster care. Jake, the older brother, became involved with gangs at a young age. He saw it as his duty to toughen up Tremaine, introducing him to a world of crime and violence. Jake's influence on Tremaine was profound. He put a gun in Tremaine's hand when he was just 11 or 12 years old. Jake's twisted logic was that he needed to show Tremaine how to survive in a cruel world. This toxic relationship set both brothers on a path that would ultimately lead to their involvement in a fatal robbery on New Year's Eve 2001. On New Year's Eve 2001, a night of celebration turned deadly in Oklahoma City. Tremaine and Jake Wood, along with two women, set out to rob unsuspecting victims. Their targets? Two out-of-town Hutterite men, Ronnie Whipf and Arnold Kleinsasser, who were celebrating at a local brewery. As the night unfolded, the Wood brothers and their accomplices lured Whipf and Kleinsasser to a motel room under the guise of a sexual encounter. But what awaited them was far from a romantic tryst. Masked and armed, the Wood brothers burst into the room. In the chaos that ensued, Ronnie Whipf was fatally stabbed. Arnold Kleinsasser managed to escape, hiding in a dumpster for hours before emerging to learn of his friend's tragic fate. The aftermath brought a shocking legal twist. Both Tremaine and Jake were charged with first-degree murder under Oklahoma's felony murder rule. This law allows anyone involved in a felony that results in death to be held criminally responsible for that death, regardless of who actually committed the killing. Despite conflicting evidence about who wielded the fatal weapon, prosecutors pursued the death penalty for both brothers. The felony murder rule meant they didn't need to prove which brother actually stabbed Whipf, only that both were involved in the underlying robbery. This case would set in motion a series of trials and appeals that would expose deep flaws in the justice system and raise troubling questions about the application of the death penalty. The trial of Tremaine Wood was a travesty of justice from the start. His court-appointed lawyer, Johnny Albert, was woefully unprepared and battling his own demons. Albert billed just 2 hours of work outside of court appearances, a shockingly low amount for a capital case. He failed to investigate key aspects of the case or prepare witnesses for their testimony. But Albert's inadequate representation went far beyond mere laziness. He was struggling with severe substance abuse issues during Tremaine's trial. Former clients later testified that Albert was using cocaine daily and drinking heavily throughout this period. He would even stop by to use drugs before heading to court. Albert's impairment was evident in his handling of the case. He waived his opening statement and initially planned to call no witnesses whatsoever during the guilt phase. When Jake Wood unexpectedly offered to testify, Albert allowed this risky and ultimately damaging testimony with little preparation. During the penalty phase, Albert did virtually nothing to humanize Tremaine or present mitigating evidence about his difficult childhood. His rambling closing argument likely did more harm than good. The outcome was tragically predictable. Tremaine was sentenced to death while his brother later received life in prison. Albert's substance abuse and negligence almost certainly impacted the jury's decision and sealed Tremaine's fate. While Tremaine's trial was marked by inadequate representation, Jake's trial told a very different story. Jake was defended by a team of 3 experienced capital defense lawyers who meticulously prepared his case. This stark contrast in legal counsel would prove pivotal. During Tremaine's trial, Jake made a shocking decision to testify. He confessed to killing Ronnie Whipf, stating he wanted to save his brother from death row. However, this confession backfired spectacularly when Jake faced his own trial. Prosecutors, who had previously argued Tremaine was the killer, now used Jake's confession against him. They presented it as evidence of Jake's guilt, along with letters in which he allegedly bragged about the murder. This flip-flop in the prosecution's theory of the crime raises serious questions about the pursuit of justice in this case. Ultimately, despite the damning confession, Jake's skilled legal team managed to secure him a life sentence rather than death. This outcome only deepens the tragedy of Tremaine's situation on death row. Despite compelling evidence of his lawyer's incompetence, Tremaine Wood has faced an uphill battle in his appeals. The legal system's procedural barriers have repeatedly thwarted his efforts to gain relief based on ineffective assistance of counsel. Tremaine's initial appeals were denied, with courts finding that his lawyer's actions were part of a strategic defense. Even when Johnny Albert admitted to inadequately representing Tremaine and struggling with substance abuse, the courts remained unmoved. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals rejected Tremaine's petition, arguing that Albert's issues appeared to have started after the trial. This decision ignored the mounting evidence of Albert's long-standing problems. They claimed the issue had already been raised and that Tremaine should have found this evidence earlier. This catch-22 situation has effectively trapped Tremaine in a legal limbo. The narrow scope of what courts will consider at each stage of the appeals process has made it nearly impossible for him to get a fair review of his ineffective counsel claim. The injustice is stark. Other clients of Albert have been granted relief due to his incompetence, yet Tremaine remains on death row, a victim of both his lawyer's failings and a rigid legal system. For over 2 decades, Tremaine Wood has lived in the shadow of death. His home, a small cell on Oklahoma's death row. Despite the oppressive conditions, Tremaine has found ways to grow and maintain connections with his family. Through letters and occasional visits, he's forged relationships with his children, who were just babies when he was incarcerated. He's become a trusted confidant for family members, offering guidance and support from behind bars. But the psychological toll of living under a death sentence is immense. Tremaine has watched fellow inmates say their final goodbyes, heard the sounds of bodies being carried out. The constant threat of execution hangs over him like a dark cloud. Still, Tremaine tries to stay positive for his loved ones. He focuses on making the most of his limited interactions, treasuring each moment with visiting family members. In the face of unimaginable circumstances, Tremaine has found a way to not just survive, but to be a source of strength for others. As it stands today, Tremaine Wood remains on death row in Oklahoma. His execution, originally scheduled for February 2024, has been postponed to an unspecified date next year. This delay came after Oklahoma's new Attorney General requested a slower pace of executions in the state. There may be a glimmer of hope on the horizon for Tremaine. A group of Republican lawmakers in Oklahoma are pushing for reform of the state's felony murder rule. If passed with retroactive provisions, this could allow Tremaine to seek resentencing. Additionally, there's growing bipartisan support for a moratorium on executions in the state. While these potential avenues for relief offer some promise, Tremaine's fate remains uncertain. His case continues to highlight the complexities and controversies surrounding capital punishment in America. As we wrap up this chilling tale of injustice, we're left with haunting questions about our legal system. Tremaine Wood sits on death row for a crime his brother confessed to committing. His case exposes deep flaws in how we apply the death penalty and protect the right to effective counsel. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the arbitrary nature of capital punishment and the devastating consequences when the system fails. As you go about your day, I urge you to reflect on Tremaine's story and what it means for justice in America. Power, Pleasure, and Pain. A study of abuse through time. This book provides a detailed examination of how sexual violence and power dynamics have manifested across different historical periods, from ancient civilizations to the modern era. It explores how figures in positions of power used their influence to manipulate and exploit others, showing that the patterns of abuse we see today have deep historical roots. Many people struggle to grasp why abuse of power, particularly sexual violence, persists in modern society. By connecting historical events with contemporary cases, the book offers crucial insights into why such behaviors remain prevalent. The book analyzes infamous cases such as those of Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, and Dominique Pellicotte, drawing parallels between them and historical figures. This section highlights how the systemic abuse seen in recent times is not a new phenomenon, but part of an ongoing cultural issue. Through the lens of these modern examples, readers will gain a better understanding of how institutions, wealth, and power have historically shielded perpetrators from justice, contributing to their ability to continue harming others. The book explores the philosophy of libertarianism, particularly through the works of Marquis de Sade, to explain the disturbing ways in which pleasure, power, and cruelty have been intertwined. This provides readers with a deeper philosophical context to interpret modern-day scandals. Unlike other studies that focus solely on historical or contemporary cases, this book uniquely blends both, offering a full spectrum of how abuse is tied to power dynamics. It stands out by making philosophical connections that help readers understand the deeper societal issues at play.